I thought helping my daughter Emma with her newborn triplets would be the most rewarding chapter of my life. After losing my husband Robert to cancer 6 months ago, I needed purpose. I needed to feel useful again. Emma called me 3 weeks after the babies were born, her voice cracking with exhaustion. "Mom, I can't do this alone. Brad works from home, but he's always in meetings. The babies barely sleep. I'm drowning." Of course I said yes. What grandmother wouldn't? I packed my belongings from the home Robert and I shared for 37 years and moved into Emma's guest room in their modern suburban home outside Sacramento. The triplets were beautiful: Sophia, Michael, and Grace. 3 months old, with Emma's dark eyes and Brad's dimpled chin. Those first 2 weeks, I threw myself into helping. I did the 2 a.m. feedings. I changed diapers. I rocked crying babies while Emma caught precious hours of sleep. Brad seemed grateful, always thanking me, always offering to help carry things or make me tea. He was attentive, perhaps too attentive, but I dismissed the thought. He was just being a good son-in-law. Emma worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, and she'd taken only 3 months of maternity leave. She was anxious about going back. "Mom, I don't know how I'll manage," she said one evening while we folded tiny onesies. "The company is demanding. They expect me back full-time." "That's why I'm here, sweetheart," I told her. "You focus on work. I'll take care of my grandbabies." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Looking back, I should have noticed that. I should have noticed a lot of things. The strange occurrences started in week 3. I've always been a light sleeper, even more so since Robert died. Our bedroom had been on the 2nd floor, and sometimes at night I'd wake up and reach for him, forgetting for those first confused seconds that he was gone. Now I slept in the guest room adjacent to the nursery, and my sleep was already fragmented by baby duty. It was a Monday night when I first heard it. 2:17 a.m., according to the clock on my nightstand. I'd just finished feeding Sophia and put her back in her crib. I was climbing back into bed when I heard voices from the nursery, low, urgent whispers, adult voices. I froze, my hand on the blanket. Emma and Brad's master bedroom was on the opposite side of the house, past the living room and down a hallway. They wouldn't be in the nursery, not at this hour, not whispering like that. I crept to my door and opened it slowly. The nursery door was closed, and a thin line of light showed underneath. Someone had turned on the lamp. The whispers continued, muffled but definitely there. I recognized Emma's voice, then Brad's. "Just a little more. They won't know. Are you sure this is safe?" "Trust me, I'm a pharmaceutical rep. I know what I'm doing." My heart hammered in my chest. What were they doing? Why were they in there in the middle of the night? The babies had been sleeping soundly when I'd put Sophia down 5 minutes ago. I approached the door, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. I reached for the handle, but it wouldn't turn. Locked. From the inside, a cold dread washed over me. Why would anyone lock a nursery door from the inside? It was a safety hazard. What if there was a fire? What if something happened to the babies? I stood there for several minutes, listening. The whispers stopped. I heard movement, then the click of the lamp being turned off. Darkness under the door again. I hurried back to my room and eased the door almost shut, leaving it open just a crack so I could see. About 3 minutes later, the nursery door opened. Brad emerged first, looking left and right down the hallway. Emma followed, carrying something small in her hand. I couldn't see what it was in the darkness. They moved quickly toward their bedroom, and I heard their door close softly. I waited 10 minutes, then went to check on the babies. I used the flashlight on my phone instead of turning on the lamp. All 3 were sleeping deeply, their breathing even and steady. Too deeply, I thought. Too still. Normal newborn sleep was fitful, punctuated by little movements and sounds. This was different. This was the kind of deep sleep that seemed almost unnatural. I stood there in the dark nursery, my phone's light casting shadows across the 3 cribs, and felt ice forming in my stomach. Something was wrong. I didn't know what yet, but something was very, very wrong. The next morning at breakfast, I watched them carefully. Emma looked tired, but that wasn't unusual. Brad was cheerful, making pancakes and humming. "How'd you sleep, Margaret?" he asked me. "Fine," I lied. "The babies were angels last night. Barely heard a peep." "See?" Emma said to Brad. "I told you they'd adjust to sleeping through the night." But 3-month-old triplets don't just suddenly start sleeping through the night. Not all three at once. Not like that. Over the next few days, I paid closer attention. On Tuesday, I noticed a small medicine dropper in the bathroom sink. Not the one we used for the baby's vitamin drops. This was different. Smaller. And it smelled faintly medicinal when I picked it up and sniffed it. On Wednesday, while taking out the trash, I found a receipt at the bottom of the kitchen bin. Walgreens. The items listed made my blood run cold. Diphenhydramine, 50 milligrams, adult formula, and melatonin, 10 milligrams extra strength. Why would they need adult-strength sleep aids? Emma had mentioned she wasn't sleeping well, but this seemed excessive. And there was another item on the receipt that caught my eye. Oral syringe, 5 milliliters. Thursday evening, I started to notice a pattern. Every Thursday was when my quarterly inheritance payment came through. Robert had been careful with money. His life insurance and retirement accounts were substantial, and he'd set them up to pay out to me in installments. Every 3 months, a significant sum hit my checking account. And every Thursday evening, Emma asked me if I wanted tea. "Mom, you look tired. Let me make you some chamomile tea. It'll help you sleep." I'd always accepted. I'd sit in the living room, sipping the tea Emma made, feeling grateful for such a thoughtful daughter. Within 20 minutes, I'd feel drowsy. Unusually drowsy. I'd head to bed early, and I'd sleep hard. So hard that I wouldn't wake up even when the babies cried. The next morning, Emma would tell me she'd handled the night shift, that I'd needed the rest. But this Thursday, something clicked. The receipt, the medicine dropper, the strange nighttime visits to the nursery, Emma's insistence that I drink the tea she made, the way Brad watched me whenever I held my teacup, his eyes tracking it to my lips. I felt sick. Surely not. Surely my own daughter wasn't drugging me. But as I sat there at the kitchen table, watching Emma fill the kettle, I knew with a certainty that made me want to vomit. "Actually, honey, I think I'll skip the tea tonight," I said. "My stomach's a bit off." Emma's hand froze on the kettle handle, just for a second. Then she smiled. "Oh, okay, Mom. Can I get you some ginger ale instead?" "No, thank you. I think I'll just head to bed early." I saw them exchange a look. Quick, but I caught it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed, watching the crack under my door, waiting. At 2:43 a.m., I heard it again, footsteps in the hallway. The nursery door opening and closing. I got up silently and pressed my ear against my door. The voices were clearer this time, because I wasn't groggy. Because there was no tea sedative dulling my senses. "Did you check the bank account?" That was Brad. "Yes. The deposit came through this afternoon. $47,000. Emma's voice. "And the documents?" "I have them." I practiced her signature. It's perfect. Once she's had the tea and she's out cold, I'll go in and get her to sign them in her sleep. She'll never know. My hand flew to my mouth. Oh God, they were forging my signature. They were accessing my inheritance account. "What about the babies?" Brad again. "Just enough to keep them quiet. Not too much. Just enough so they sleep through and Mom doesn't wake up to check on them. We can't risk her being alert and noticing anything." They were drugging my grandbabies. My own daughter was drugging her children. I stumbled backward, my legs weak. I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. What else had they done? How long had this been going on? I grabbed my phone and opened my banking app with shaking fingers. I logged into Robert's inheritance account, the one I rarely checked because the quarterly payments came automatically. The balance made me gasp. It was almost $200,000 less than it should be. I scrolled through the transactions, withdrawals, large withdrawals, signed with my electronic signature, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, going back 8 weeks, since the second week I'd been here. They'd been doing this almost from the beginning, every Thursday. Tea, drugged sleep, forged signatures, stolen money, and they were drugging the triplets to cover their tracks. I sat there in the dark, my phone's glow illuminating my face, and felt something I'd never felt before. Not just betrayal, not just hurt, but a cold, calculated fury. This was my daughter, my child. I'd raised her alone after her father left when she was 6. I'd worked 2 jobs to put her through college. I'd loved her unconditionally. And this was how she repaid me. By stealing from me. By drugging me. By endangering her own children. My grandchildren. But I wasn't some helpless old woman. Robert had always said I had a steel core. "You're stronger than you think, Margaret," he'd told me during his final days. "Promise me you'll be okay. Promise me you'll fight for yourself." I promised him then, and I was going to keep that promise now. The next morning, Friday, I acted normal. I smiled at breakfast. I cooed at the babies. I thanked Brad for making coffee. Inside, I was planning. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. I needed proof. Concrete, undeniable proof. My word against theirs wouldn't be enough, especially since they could claim I was confused, grieving, maybe even senile. I was 62, but I could imagine Brad painting me as a batty old woman losing her grip on reality. No, I needed evidence. During my teaching career, I'd always been good with technology. I'd had to be, to keep up with my high school students. I knew how to use computers, smartphones, cloud storage, and I knew how to shop online. That Friday afternoon, while Emma was at work and Brad was in his home office for a marathon video conference, I used my iPad to order 3 items from Amazon with next-day delivery: 2 wireless hidden cameras, disguised as phone chargers, and 1 audio recording pen. Saturday, while they took the babies to a pediatric checkup, I set up the cameras. One I plugged into an outlet in the nursery, positioned so it faced the cribs. The other I plugged in near the dining room table, where I'd seen Emma photographing documents. The pen I kept in my pocket. I also did something else. I called my bank's fraud department. "I think someone may be attempting to access my account," I told them. "I'd like to freeze all transactions until I can come in person with proper identification." The representative was sympathetic and efficient. Within an hour, the account was locked. Then I waited. Sunday night, I made a show of drinking the tea Emma offered. But when she went to check on the babies, I poured it into the potted plant by the sofa. I went to bed at my usual time, but I didn't sleep. I watched the camera feeds on my phone, the app showing me 2 small windows of live video. At 2:23 a.m., they came. Emma pushed open my door slowly. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing deep and steady. She approached the bed, and I felt her touch my hand. "Mom?" she whispered. I didn't respond. I made my body limp. "She's out cold," Emma said. Brad appeared in the doorway. "Good, get the papers." Through my barely open eyelids, I watched Emma leave and return with a folder. She sat on the edge of my bed and opened it. Documents, bank documents. She pulled out a pen and gently placed it in my hand, wrapping my fingers around it. "Okay, I'm going to guide your hand," she murmured. "Just like Thursday." She positioned my hand on the paper and moved it, forging my signature. Once, twice, 3 times on different pages. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jerk my hand away and slap her. But I stayed still. The camera in my room, positioned on my dresser where I'd hidden my phone, was recording everything. When they left, I heard them go to the nursery. I watched through the camera feed as Emma took out a small bottle and a syringe. She drew liquid into it and went to Sophia's crib first. She gently squeezed a small amount into the baby's mouth. Sophia stirred but didn't wake. Emma moved to Michael, then Grace. "There," she said to Brad. "They'll sleep like little angels for the rest of the night. No interruptions." "How much longer do you think we can keep this up?" Brad asked. "As long as we need to. We've got almost $200,000 so far. Another 3 months, and we'll have close to $400,000. Then we can ship Mom to a nursing home. We'll say the grief over Dad made her unstable, that she was showing signs of dementia. No one will question it." My heart shattered. Actually shattered. But I kept recording. Over the next week, I gathered evidence. Every night, I pretended to drink the tea and poured it out. Every night, they came. The cameras captured it all. Emma forging signatures, them drugging the babies. Their conversations about money, about their plan to institutionalize me. I also discovered where they were keeping my signed documents. In Brad's home office, in a locked filing cabinet. I found the key in his desk drawer on Wednesday afternoon while he was out getting groceries. I photographed everything. The forged signatures next to examples of my real signature. The bottles of diphenhydramine and melatonin hidden in their bathroom. The syringes. The bank statements showing transfers to their accounts. On Thursday afternoon, 1 week after I'd started collecting evidence, I made my move. I called my attorney first. Bernard had handled Robert's estate and had known our family for 20 years. "Bernard, I need you to come to Emma's house. Immediately. And I need you to bring a notary." "Margaret, what's wrong?" "Everything. I'll explain when you get here." Then I called the police non-emergency line. "I need to report financial elder abuse and child endangerment. I have significant evidence, and I need officers to come to an address." The dispatcher took me seriously. "Ma'am, are you in immediate danger?" "No, but 3 infants are being routinely drugged, and I have video evidence." "Stay on the line. I'm dispatching officers now." Bernard arrived first, looking concerned. I met him at the door and ushered him into the guest room. "Margaret, what on earth?" I showed him. The videos, the photos, the bank statements, the forged documents. I watched his face go from confused to shocked to angry. "My God, Margaret, your own daughter. I need you to witness me revoking Emma's power of attorney, if she has one. I need you to help me secure my assets. And I need you to be here when the police arrive." Emma and Brad came home at 4:30 p.m., Brad carrying takeout bags, Emma juggling her purse and phone. They walked into the living room to find me sitting on the sofa. Bernard was beside me. 2 police officers stood near the fireplace. The look on Emma's face was almost comical. Almost. If it hadn't been so tragic. "Mom? What's going on?" "I know everything, Emma," I said. My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. "I know about the tea, the drugging, the forged signatures, the money you've stolen, everything." Brad dropped the takeout bags. "Now wait a minute. We have video evidence," one officer interrupted. "Multiple nights of video and audio. We've already reviewed the footage Miss Chen provided." "This is ridiculous," Emma said, but her voice wavered. "Mom's been confused lately. Grief does that. She hasn't been herself." "Actually, I've been myself more than I have in months," I said. "Myself enough to install hidden cameras. Myself enough to document everything you've been doing. Myself enough to freeze my bank accounts before you could steal more money. And myself enough to call Child Protective Services about the fact that you've been giving diphenhydramine to 3-month-old infants." Emma's face went white. The next hours were a blur. The officers asked questions. I showed them everything on my laptop, Bernard certifying that the evidence was legitimate and unaltered. A social worker arrived for the babies. Emma was crying, begging, saying she'd made a mistake, that the stress had gotten to her. "I would have given you anything," I told her at one point, while the officers were on the phone with their supervisor. "If you'd needed money, I would have helped you. But you drugged me, Emma. You drugged your own mother. You put your babies at risk. For money. You don't understand the pressure," she started. "I understand that the daughter I raised would never have done this. I understand that greed turned you into someone I don't recognize." Brad tried to run. He actually tried to walk out the back door. An officer stopped him. They were arrested that evening. Financial exploitation of an elder, forgery, child endangerment. The charges kept adding up. The babies were examined at the hospital. The doctors found traces of diphenhydramine and melatonin in their systems, but thankfully, no lasting harm. The social worker asked if I could take temporary custody. "Of course," I said, holding little Grace against my chest. "Of course I can." That night, alone in the house with 3 sleeping infants, I sat in the nursery and cried. Not for Emma, the adult who'd made her choices, but for Emma, the little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories, for the daughter I'd lost somewhere along the way. Robert had always worried that we'd spoiled her, that giving her everything we couldn't have as children had been a mistake. I'd defended her. "She's a good person," I'd told him. "She has a good heart." I'd been wrong. In the weeks that followed, I learned the full extent of their plan. They'd been in debt. Brad's work-from-home job was actually a failed cryptocurrency investment scheme that had lost them $150,000. Emma's pharmaceutical sales position was in jeopardy because she'd been underperforming. They were desperate, and when Robert died and left me the inheritance, they saw an opportunity. The plan had been to drain as much as possible, then have me declared incompetent. Brad had been researching memory care facilities. They'd even consulted a lawyer about guardianship procedures. They'd planned this, methodically, carefully. For months, Emma took a plea deal. 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 3. Brad went to trial and got 7 years. The judge was particularly harsh with him. "You targeted a grieving widow," she said during sentencing. "You endangered 3 helpless infants. This court finds your actions reprehensible." I got full custody of Sophia, Michael, and Grace. The court permanently revoked Emma's parental rights. I also recovered most of the stolen money after lengthy legal proceedings. 6 months later, I'm still in Emma's house. It's mine now. I bought it from them for $1 after they defaulted on the mortgage. The nursery is bright and cheerful. I painted it yellow. I had the locks changed. I threw out every teacup in the house and bought new ones. The babies are thriving. Sophia rolls over now. Michael has the most beautiful laugh. Grace is the quiet observer, always watching everything with those serious dark eyes. They'll never remember their parents. I'll have to tell them someday, when they're old enough to understand. I'll have to explain why Mommy and Daddy aren't here, why Grandma is raising them. But for now, they're safe, they're loved, they're mine to protect. Emma writes to me from prison sometimes. I don't open the letters. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive her. But that day isn't today. People ask me how I had the strength to do it, to turn in my own daughter, to take my grandchildren and basically ensure Emma would lose everything. I tell them the truth. It wasn't strength, it was love. Love for 3 innocent babies who deserved better than parents who would drug them for convenience and greed. Love for myself, for the life Robert and I had built, for the legacy he'd left that was meant to secure my future, not fund my daughter's criminal activities. And yes, maybe even love for Emma. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop someone before they go too far, before they hurt themselves and others beyond repair. I am 62 years old. I am raising triplets. I get 4 hours of sleep on a good night. My back aches from carrying babies in car seats. I haven't had a full meal sitting down in months, and I have never felt more purposeful in my life. I am not a victim. I am not a fool. I am not a confused old woman who was too trusting. I am a grandmother who saved her grandchildren. I am a woman who refused to be drugged and robbed by her own family. I am a survivor who used her intelligence and determination to bring justice not just for herself, but for 3 babies who couldn't defend themselves. Robert would be proud. On the hard days, when Sophia won't stop crying and Michael is teething and Grace has a fever, I talk to him. I tell him about the babies. I tell him I kept my promise. I fought for myself. I fought for them. And we won. The babies are sleeping now. All 3 in their cribs, breathing softly in the afternoon sun that streams through the nursery window. I installed new windows. The old ones reminded me too much of those terrible nights. Watching Emma and Brad through the camera feeds, documenting their betrayal. These windows are bigger. They let in more light. Because that's what we need now. Light, air, the chance to start fresh. I'm making dinner tonight. Chicken and rice. Simple. I'll eat it at the table, with my phone nearby in case one of the babies wakes up. I'll probably fall asleep by 9. I'll wake up at 1 a.m. for the feeding, then again at 4 a.m., then start the day at 6. And I'll do it all again tomorrow, and the day after that, for as long as these babies need me. Because I am the head of this family now. I am the protector, I am the guardian, and nothing, not grief, not betrayal, not age, will stop me from giving these children the life they deserve. That's my story. That's what I heard at 2 a.m. in my daughter's nursery. That's what I discovered, what I documented, what I fought against. And that's how 3 babies came to be mine, not through birth, but through battle. Through love fierce enough to face the unthinkable truth and strong enough to do what needed to be done. People call me brave. I don't feel brave. I feel tired and sad and sometimes angry, but I also feel something else, something I haven't felt since Robert died. I feel needed. I feel purposeful. I feel alive. And on the good days, when all 3 babies are smiling, when they reach for me and I hold them close, I feel something even better. I feel hope.